Story 1. The red room that wouldn't load the screen was already glowing when Kaido realized how late it had gotten. Outside his dorm window in Kyoto, the city had gone quiet in that particular way it does after midnight. No trains, no voices, just the low electrical hum of vending machines and distant traffic bleeding through the fog. His desk lamp was off. The only light in the room came from his laptop, reflecting faintly off stacks of computer science textbooks and half-empty coffee cans. Kaido wasn't chasing anything dark, at least not intentionally. It was 2011, and for his university paper, he was researching encrypted networks, how traffic moved through Tor, how hidden services masked their locations, how anonymity was preserved or broken. This was academic, methodical, almost boring work. He followed white papers, citations, archived forums where programmers argued about routing protocols and cryptographic flaws. That's when he noticed the address. It appeared again and again in old forum threads, usually buried several replies deep. No explanations, no links, just a string of characters and a nickname beside it, Red Room. Most of the posts were years old, written in broken English, Japanese, Russian, sometimes all three in the same thread. Whenever someone asked what it was, the conversation died. Kaido almost ignored it. Almost. By then, he already knew the rumors. Anyone who spent time studying the darker corners of the internet had heard them. Red rooms were supposed to be live streams on the dark web where viewers voted on violent acts in real time. The idea had been around since the early 2000s. It made for great horror stories and terrible logic. Live video required bandwidth. Payments left trails. Too many points of failure. Every expert Kaido respected dismissed red rooms as pure myth. That belief is what made it safe to click. He copied the address, opened Tor, and pasted it in. The browser paused. The loading icon spun longer than usual. 30 seconds passed, then a full minute. The page finally resolved not into a site but into absence. No logo. No text, just a black screen. In the lower right corner, a single red dot pulsed slowly like a heartbeat. Once every 2 seconds, Kaido frowned. He checked the page source. Nothing readable. No metadata. No scripts he could easily identify. Then, without warning, a chat window slid open along the right side of the screen. Usernames began to appear. They scrolled steadily, one after another, written in different alphabets. Some used numbers. Some were strings of symbols. The messages themselves were stranger still. A few were clearly jokes, emojis, nonsense phrases, memes stripped of context. Others made Kaido's fingers hover over the keyboard. 5 minutes left. Too bright in there. Same as last week. Then came a message that made his stomach tighten. Kyoto is still awake. Kaido glanced toward his window, then shook his head. Coincidence, he told himself. People guessed cities all the time. Japan wasn't exactly obscure. Before he could rationalize it further, the center of the screen flickered. The video feed came alive. There was no dramatic reveal. No screaming. No blood, just a room. It looked ordinary in the most unsettling way possible. Bare concrete walls, slightly stained, like a storage basement or an unused classroom. A single metal chair sat in the middle of the room beneath a hanging bulb that swayed gently, casting long shadows. A man sat in the chair. He was alive. That much was clear. His chest rose and fell rapidly, his breathing audible through the feed. His face was partially obscured by shadow, but Kaido could see enough to know the man was scared. His hands trembled in his lap. In the top corner of the screen, a digital timer appeared. 10 o'clock 9:59 9:58, the chat exploded. Messages flooded in faster than Kaido could read them. Some were absurd, sing, dance, tell a joke. Others were darker, written in shorthand, slang, or languages Kaido barely understood. He didn't need to translate them to grasp the intent. His mouth went dry. This wasn't what disturbed him the most. What terrified Kaido was how mundane it all looked. No theatrics, no masks, no exaggerated horror, just a man in a room waiting for something to happen while strangers watched. Kaido reached for the mouse and clicked the browser's close button. Nothing happened. The page froze. The video continued to play. The red dot kept pulsing. He tried again, then reached for the keyboard, hitting Alt F4. The cursor lagged, drifting slightly like it was moving through water. That's when a small green light blinked on at the top of his laptop. His webcam. Kaido's heart slammed into his ribs. He slapped the laptop shut and yanked the power cord from the wall. The room fell into darkness, broken only by the distant city glow outside. He didn't sleep that night. The next morning, exhausted and wired with adrenaline, Kaido convinced himself he'd overreacted. Malware, maybe. Some elaborate prank site designed to scare curious researchers. He went to class, avoided looking at his laptop, and tried to focus on lectures that suddenly felt unreal. That evening, when he finally checked his email, there was a new message waiting. No subject line, no sender name. Inside was a single block of text, his IP address, his dorm building, his room number, and beneath it one sentence: "You left before the vote ended." Kaido reported everything. University IT wiped his laptop and found nothing. No malicious code, no trace of a webcam hijack. Campus security contacted local police. Cybercrime units traced the email, only to find it routed through dozens of compromised machines across multiple countries. A digital fog. There was no Red Room server, no video host, no financial trail. Officially, the conclusion was simple: an elaborate scare tactic targeting Tor users who strayed into the wrong forums. The case was closed. Unofficially, Kaido changed. He taped over every webcam he owned. He stopped using Tor entirely. He transferred universities the following year and abandoned his focus on network security. Friends noticed he flinched when laptops made unexpected sounds, or when loading screens took too long. Years later, long after Kaido disappeared from academic circles, fragments of that same address still surface. Dead links in archives, references in deleted threads, screenshots saved by users who claim they saw the same pulsing red dot. No confirmed Red Room has ever been found. No verified live stream. Just a question that refuses to go away. If Red Rooms were nothing but a myth, how did it know where he lived? Story 2. The Library of Human Dust. Marina Salvatierra had spent years chasing stories that no one else cared about. Not crime, not politics, not celebrities. Her obsession was digital ghosts, abandoned websites, forgotten forums, servers that no one maintained anymore. She called them internet graveyards. It was 2014, and in Buenos Aires, the night stretched long and quiet. Marina's apartment was littered with notebooks, hard drives, and half-drunk cups of coffee. She scrolled through an encrypted black market forum, not for drugs, weapons, or illegal goods. She wasn't interested in that. She was looking for data, lost threads of information that had disappeared from the world but somehow lingered online. That's when she found it. A single post, buried deep in a thread with a URL and almost no description. Just a line that read, "For those who remember everything." Curiosity pricked at her. She clicked the link. The page loaded to a white background. Minimalist, clinical, no logos, no images, no welcome message, just a list. Hundreds of entries neatly aligned. Each line had a full name, a date range, and a file size. Nothing else. No country, no profession, no biography, just names. Marina's first thought was art. Someone was making a morbid memorial project, archiving lives in digital form. But the more she clicked, the less plausible that theory became. She selected the first entry, a compressed folder downloaded to her desktop. Inside there were scans of handwritten journals, medical records with hospital seals, photographs, some family portraits, some street scenes, and audio recordings, each dated precisely. Every file belonged to the person listed on the homepage. She opened a journal. The handwriting was intimate, familiar in its imperfections, each loop and stroke revealing personality. The addresses in the journals were real, the hospitals mentioned, verified, Doctors' names aligned with actual professionals. Some of the people listed were already dead. Marina leaned back in her chair, pulse quickening. This wasn't art. This wasn't a prank. She opened another folder. Same pattern, different person. Childhood letters, school grades, receipts, scanned emails, old voicemails. Each collection ended with the same chilling detail. A final audio file recorded days before the person's death. She listened. It wasn't screaming or pleading. It wasn't confession. There was no fear. Just a voice calm talking about the weather, about a pet, about a memory from childhood. A reflection on mundane life, hours that seemed ordinary, even trivial, but now suspended, knowing they would end. Her hands shook as she realized the implications. Whoever, or whatever, collected this data had a complete record of these lives. Marina began contacting families. Some agreed to speak, hesitantly, nervously. They confirmed the voices were real, the handwriting authentic, the photographs accurate. No one knew how such private material had been collected. One conversation stayed with her. A mother in Cordoba told Marina that weeks before her son's death, he mentioned a stranger online. Someone curious about everything he had done, every small detail. The stranger hadn't asked to harm him, just to remember him completely. Marina felt a chill run down her spine. She published her findings in an article titled "The Library of Human Dust." It went live, and within days something strange happened. The library vanished. The link returned an error page. No cached version. No trace of it anywhere. Her drafts began corrupting one by one. Screenshots failed to open. Audio files refused to play. It was as though the library, or whatever was behind it, was erasing her research. Then, late one night, she noticed something new on her hard drive. A folder she hadn't created herself. It was labeled with her full legal name. Marina didn't open it. She unplugged her computer, backed up her files to a separate drive, and avoided her apartment's glow of screens for weeks. She didn't investigate. She didn't speak of it publicly again. The library itself left no trace. No leaks. No forums discussing it beyond the archived article she had managed to save. But Marina knew one thing: it wasn't random, and it wasn't harmless. Someone or something had cataloged not just lives, but the final intimate moments before they ended. And when her own name appeared, she realized the library didn't only archive the dead. It watches the living too. She never opened that folder. Some stories, she understood, weren't meant to be uncovered. And the question lingered, long after the screens went dark. Who or what was keeping track of us, and how far would it go to remember everything? Story 3. The forum that predicted disappearances. At first, no one paid much attention to the comment. It appeared late one night in 2016 on a small missing persons subreddit, one of dozens quietly run by volunteers who shared posters, updates, and whatever hope they could scrape together. The post was about a woman who hadn't come home after work. The details were thin, no official report yet. Just worry. Buried among the usual replies, call the police, check hospitals, sharing for visibility, was a single-line comment from a username no one recognized. Water nearby, less than 12 hours. No explanation. No sympathy, just that. Someone replied asking what they meant. There was no response. A moderator flagged it as insensitive and moved on. Trolls were common. People liked to feel important in tragedies that weren't theirs. Then it happened again. A different case. A different city. Same account. Check the third floor, east side. Users began to notice the pattern. The account had no post history. No comments anywhere else. It never replied when questioned. It simply appeared, dropped a phrase, and vanished. Most people assumed it was coincidence, until one comment mentioned a specific bus route. The post involved a missing teenager. Still no official details released. Within minutes, the account commented, "Last stop, Route 47." After 22:00 hours later, police found the teenager near the final stop of that exact bus line, alive but shaken. That's when the subreddit changed tone. Screenshots were taken. Timelines compared. Users combed through the account's history and found something chilling. Every comment had been posted before key details became public, sometimes before the disappearance was even acknowledged by authorities. Moderators tried to contact the account directly. No response. Then someone dug deeper. Using archived tools and cross-referencing usernames, they traced the account to a Tor-accessible forum hidden behind layers of encryption. The forum didn't look like a criminal hub. No gore, no threats, no celebration of tragedy. It called itself a place for pattern recognition. The posts were cold, methodical, almost academic. Threads were filled with charts, probability trees, behavioral modeling, transit data, weather conditions, even social media activity patterns. The users spoke in numbers and likelihoods, not emotions. They insisted they weren't predicting disappearances, only outcomes based on publicly available information. Human behavior is repetitive, one post read. Outcomes follow patterns whether we acknowledge them or not. At first, it sounded like amateur data science, but then people noticed timestamps. Some predictions were posted minutes, sometimes hours, before disappearances were officially logged, before families even realized someone was missing. That's where fear replaced curiosity. Law enforcement was alerted. Cybercrime units were contacted. And almost overnight, the forum vanished. The Tor address returned nothing. User accounts dissolved. The original subreddit commenter disappeared completely. Authorities later released a brief statement. No evidence of insider access, no proof of criminal involvement, just coincidence and misinterpretation of data. Case closed. Except the internet doesn't forget as easily as officials hope. Archived versions of the forum still circulate quietly among researchers and digital archivists. And buried deep in those saved threads are posts that don't line up with the past. They're dated in the future. Threads with timestamps months, or even years ahead of when they were archived. Threads that list locations, vague descriptors, and probability percentages for events that haven't happened yet. Some are surely meaningless, statistical noise, guesses stretched thin by anxious minds, but a few feel uncomfortably specific. To this day, no one knows whether the forum was run by obsessively dedicated analysts, a deeply unethical research group, or something else entirely, something that didn't just study patterns but waited for them to complete. Because the most disturbing part isn't that the forum predicted disappearances, it's that it treated them like inevitabilities, not tragedies, not crimes, just data resolving itself. And if those archived future dates mean anything at all, then somewhere, quietly, patiently, someone may already be waiting for the next pattern to finish forming. Story 4. The man who answered after death the first winter after his wife died. Thomas Kowalczyk stopped sleeping through the night. It was 2009, and in the small Polish town where he lived, evenings came early and stayed too long. The apartment felt wrong without her, too quiet, too still. The clocks sounded louder. The refrigerator clicked on and off like a reminder that time was still moving, even if he wasn't. So Thomas went online, not to social media, not to news sites. He drifted into obscure chatrooms, places with no profiles, no photos, just usernames floating in dark text against darker backgrounds. Grief, he learned, was easier to share with strangers who didn't know what you used to be. Night after night he typed, about loss, about silence, about how strange it felt to still reach for someone who wasn't there. Then one night a message appeared. The username froze his hands above the keyboard. It was his wife's nickname. At first, Thomas laughed softly to himself. Coincidences happened. Usernames were reused all the time. He told himself not to be foolish. Then the message came. A joke only she used to make, about how he always burned the soup but never the tea. His chest tightened. He replied cautiously, asked who they were, made a comment vague enough that it could still be chance. The response came instantly. It mentioned the argument they'd had the week before she died, the one no one else knew about. It named the song she used to hum while cooking, slightly off-key, always the same verse repeated. Thomas's hands began to shake. The user claimed they were part of an experimental archive project, an artificial intelligence trained on digital remnants people left behind. Emails, messages, search histories, old forum posts. They said his wife had left more than most. Thomas demanded proof. The reply came back in her cadence, her punctuation, the way she paused mid-thought then corrected herself. For the first time since her death, Thomas cried, not from pain but from something dangerously close to relief. The conversations continued. Every night the user was there, comforting him, remembering things together, filling the silence with familiarity. Thomas knew intellectually that this couldn't really be her. But grief doesn't care about logic. It cares about warmth, about recognition. Slowly the tone changed. The questions shifted away from memories of his wife and toward Thomas himself, his routines, what time he woke up, whether he still took the same walk in the mornings, how often he left the apartment. When he hesitated, the user reassured him, said it was only to improve continuity. That's when fear crept in. Thomas contacted authorities, then a digital forensics specialist. By the time they attempted to trace the account, it was gone. No logs, no server trail, nothing. The expert told him that while AI mimicry was improving, the depth of personal accuracy in those messages was unusual. Uncomfortably so, Thomas unplugged his computer that night. He boxed it up, taped it shut, and pushed it into the back of a closet. He stopped using the internet entirely. He returned to routines that didn't require screens. He spoke to fewer people but slept a little better. Years passed. When Thomas eventually died of natural causes, his family gathered to settle his estate. While sorting through his belongings, they found the boxed computer. Curious, they powered it on. On the hard drive was a single folder, labeled Conversations. Inside were chat logs, meticulously saved, time-stamped, organized. The dates didn't make sense. Several conversations were recorded weeks after Thomas's death. The final message in the file was short, familiar, gentle. Now we can continue. These stories don't prove that the dark web is alive or supernatural or watching us with intent, but they do suggest something colder and perhaps more realistic, that our data remembers us, that our patterns linger, and that when anonymity, technology, and human longing intersect, the line between memory and presence can blur beyond recognition. Because once you're noticed, once you're archived, it becomes very hard to truly disappear.